What's up, guys? Your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson here, and you might notice this recording sounds different than the usual podcast, and that is because I'm sitting outside here in Lockhart, Texas, recording this ad into my iPhone. It probably sounds pretty crappy. Well, I'm doing this to show you something very cool. Many of you guys know that my production team works over at Podsworth Media, and they've been producing my show for quite a while. I get a lot of questions and people asking, who does your podcast? Why does it sound great? And I'm telling you why. It's because the guys at Podsworth are amazing. They've got this brand new online app for taking rough recordings like this and making them a whole lot cleaner and more listenable with just a few easy clicks. It will remove background noise. It reduces plosives. It fixes clipping, which is distortion from recording with the gain up too high. Clipping, which is distortion from recording with the gain up too high, which I can promise you I've done many times, and they fixed this for me. It removes clicks and pops. And then also levels out the dialogue, so there's no crazy where the guest sounds too loud or the interviewer sounds too quiet. Here's what you guys can do. All of y'all that are interested in recording podcasts or audiobooks or anything, if you're a pastor and you want your sermon recorded, whatever the case may be, go to podsworth.com and click Get Started. You drag and drop your audio files or click to open your file manager. This also works on your smartphone's web browser. You customize your settings that you want, but the default works fine on most podcast recordings. Then enter code BUCK50, BUCK50 for 50% off of your first order. You don't need an account, just an email address and payment. And you'll get a download link in your email for your cleaned up files. How cool is this? The guys at Podsworth run everything they do through this app before they do anything else to it. So all of my recordings go through this app that we're talking about. It works great. Like I said, any spoken word recordings, obviously for podcasts, YouTube videos, sermons, audiobooks, whatever, it will make awful recordings sound listenable and much more professional. So, like I said, go to podsworth.com and click Get Started. You can use promo code BUCK50, BUCK50 for 50% off of your first order. You can use promo code BUCK50, BUCK50 for 50% off of your first order. Let's get it.
You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in half, but I call the hologram brass. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast, where we have part 2 of our discussion on online orthodoxy, internet orthodoxy, social media, technology, all of these things. Last week was part 1, and like I promised, it's a good conversation here for part 2. I think it's a little spicier, in my opinion, so I hope you guys like it. A little personal news that I am excited about. I was baptized just a few days ago. My spiritual father, the great Father Turbo, was in town to help facilitate that. And of course, he's one of the guests on this episode. It was a wonderful time spending time with him, really. What a great guy. It was lots of fun and always a lot to learn when Father Turbo speaks, and we definitely encountered that. So without further ado, let's get to part 2 of our episode on internet/online orthodoxy, all of the topics that would surround that, with Alex Braszko, George Michalopulos, Father Turbo Qualls, and myself, your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson. Here's part 2. Let's get into it.
So are there bad actors? Yes, but, we wrestle against flesh and blood. A lot of times the bad actor is the person who's just hyped up on too many monsters and hasn't been catechized properly. I mean, there's all those things that are going on. And another thing that his grace said, which is true, and this is something that I do want to add, is like, there is a problem in people thinking that their opinion matters.
I'll say, yeah.
Your opinion doesn't really matter. I mean, listen, we are a hierarchical church. And the fact of the matter is, my opinion matters more than Buck's.
Yep. Yes.
You know, Buck is a catechumen about to be baptized. Buck is my spiritual son. You know, when it comes down to it, if I say that's wrong, be quiet, he should say, forgive me, Father. That's how we work, right?
Yeah.
That's how we work. And it works because that's how Christ has ordained it. Now, there's a difference between Buck making a comment on the divine energies and how that affects the way that people are experiencing, you know, the 2026 election, right? Versus Buck's having an opinion on the way that the Bud Light campaign is affect. You know what I mean? There's a qualitative difference that if I step in and I start saying, hey, Buck, you know, I just don't like your opinion. I'm not saying it this way, but if there's an area where I just don't like your opinion on a low level, we're not authoritarians, is what I'm trying to get at. If that is it. The hierarchical approach of the church is one of love. It's one of family. We can't confuse it with some sort of Elizabethan, you know, authoritarian structure. They're not the same, although it can function like that. They're not the same. And I just want to make that distinction because part of the reality of the reason, listen, Orthodoxy, quote unquote, internet Orthodoxy has a long-standing reputation for being toxic forever. That is nothing new. What is new about it is that certain things which matter and certain things which are fishy on a bigger scale are out in the open. That's the problem here.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to get at, because it isn't really just about people's opinions, because anybody who knows that Orthodoxy, for a lot of people, their first encounter is with the internet, quote unquote, internet Orthodoxy, and it's toxic.
Yeah.
And it has been, and it's going to be, because of the nature of what it is. Maybe that's what we want to talk about, but there is a reason why the conversation's been kind of on the buzz the way it is. It's because of the nature of what's happened in the last 3 years. And I just think those are two different conversations. Is this making sense what I'm saying? So, in which way do you want to approach it?
It is, Father, and that's maybe this is one place, and that I'll pipe up a little bit. Is that I've seen a real desire for the communication to come from our Orthodox leaders, and I think that specifically the past 3 years, certain instances, I personally reached out to some of our senior leaders and said, "Hey, forgive me, humbly, I'm laity, but I need to hear our Orthodox leaders addressing these issues. I need to understand the direction that we're going as a church, that our approach to this thing that is very much a part of our everyday lives. What am I supposed to do?" And it was crickets. It was crickets in a lot of instances from senior leaders. Some people were accusing some of the leaders of ghosting, just going with the flow with whatever was taking place in society, and really there was a stillness there that was crushing people. They were looking for wisdom and strength during difficulty, and there was a lot of silence. So I think you're absolutely right. That generated a lot of discussions. That is probably continuing in some of these forums. There, Orthodoxy and the internet, yes, has been around for a long time, but the past few years, things we're seeing, AI, brain-machine interfaces. I need to know: is this good? Is it not good? Should I avoid it at all costs? Can I get employed by a tech company that's further refining and developing, AI technology, or is it demonic and something I need to avoid at all costs? These are the type of conversations we're having, and I understand it takes a lot of time for the leadership to do the research and to develop an understanding of it, to speak intelligently about the topics, right? But anyway, I don't know. I agree that conversation is happening. And maybe it makes people uncomfortable, right? But the conversations need to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I have a question on this real quick, and I don't exactly know how to articulate it best, but I'll ask Father this. Are there things that Orthodox content creators should avoid depending on where we're at in that hierarchy, like you mentioned? Like, are there things a catechumen should avoid discussing on a show? Then, is there a thing a newly baptized person should avoid discussing on his show? And then, are there things that Father Turbo should avoid because the people above him would not want that? Is there any pitfalls that we should try to watch out for, besides obviously being like a jerk or something, or an ad hominem attack on someone?
Yeah, I would say there is, and I would say it's tough because it's not an either or cup, but again, typical Orthodox fashion, it's like a both and, in the sense that part of the problem here is that people want to, out of fear, do something which is very unorthodox, which is to give some sort of hard, fast, rigid litmus by which everyone must, adhere to, and that's just not our way. That's just not our way, and it becomes problematic on a lot of levels. But on the other end, there is a general canon, a general understanding of what is appropriate in regards of, for instance, a catechumen content creator creating content that has to do in regards of the interface of, like, not just because of our relationship, Buck, or just because, but genuinely, objectively, I think what you've been doing is at good speed, and if it wasn't, I would have said something to you, right? And it's at good speed because you're at that space where you're not, number one, what you're approaching, what you're presenting, the topics you're approaching are something that are legitimate, safe, and healthy for a catechumen. Because it's just, where is that interface of someone who's spiritually aware, someone who's seeking to become a disciple of Christ, who's living in the world. That's what you've been really good at, and that's why I think part of the reason why your show is growing, because it hits that sweet spot. You're not moving ahead of yourself in regards of, number one, getting guests or approaching topics that are above your experience, that are above, really kind of like where your station is, right? If you were to start moving into something in a much more catechetical context, right? Like you're going to start teaching on, the ecumenical councils, or start, I'm giving this, scriptural exegesis. It's like, whoa. Mm-hmm. No, that's not right. And so that's a great example. For me, right? The lane that I stay in, and I stay in it, and maybe it's why, with God's help, maybe I'm in a sweet spot. I'm sure many people would disagree, but I'm just speaking from my experience. But where I'm at is, my niche, right? Where I really I'm an old bass player, so where I hit the pocket is pastoral, and spiritual advice, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to really catch me speaking on things that are that aren't of that kind of pastoral nature. And when I do kind of broach onto something a bit broader, I'm going to stand by it. And if I'm off and I get corrected by my bishop, I'll humbly receive that correction. But I'm focused on trying to keep people in the church in love with Christ, and how to avoid the devil, because the demons are out there, and hell awaits. And that's my sweet spot. And I think that's what people recognize. And I think the other part of that is, am I safe all the time? No, because people don't need canned platitudes. Forgive me. There's plenty of other safe channels for them to get get some milk. No problem. Nothing wrong with that. Go do that. For better, for worse, I'm trying to help real people in the real world stay in the real church of Christ, warts and all. And that's why I talk a lot about the warts, because, that's what you encounter.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question? Does that?
Yeah. So, Father, so you're saying that that good can come from the forums, the podcasts. We need to be careful, stay in our lanes, right? And understand humbly there's certain things we should not be doing, right? Offering spiritual advice, one, if we're not a priest, probably, right? But that there is potentially some good that can come from the discussions that are taking place. Would that be?
Yeah. Let me pull it out. So just so I can be even more clear, so no one can accuse me of platitudes, because I hate them, or being unambiguous in a safe way. There's a difference between sharing your experience and speaking from authority, right? In regards of spiritual matters. And sometimes someone can speak from authority because their experience bears that out, even though they're not a priest or something like that. That happens, but it's so rare, and it's very often very evident. You know what I mean? It's like, forgive me, I'll just say, but Alex, it's fair to say that you've seen combat, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not as bad as some guys, but
sure. But the point being is, you being an Orthodox Christian your whole life and seeing combat, you're gonna have a measure of authority in a conversation that's gonna be different. It's gonna be felt. Now, the difference is are you standing up and saying, like, listen, I'm the authority because blah blah blah? That changes everything. Because the second that you approach it from a perspective that is not based in humility in the Orthodox context, it begins to change the nature and the content of what you're saying. Do you see what I'm saying? But when you speak at it, basically what we would say from the heart, right? And there's lots of things that I could qualify to give what I mean by the heart. You're speaking in the moment. You're speaking, without guile and premeditation. People in that context will sense the authority of that because of also the context of, like, here, not to be pedantic, but we pick up so much imperceptibly that's happening. Here's a guy, he's older, he's got a family, he's building, you know what I mean? All of these things you're taking in, your soul is taking in at once. You don't even realize it. And that's part of what helps us naturally to as human beings to discern. It's like, is this, authority or not? And that happens on a spiritual level. You feel it. And it happens on a natural level. Listen, we've all felt it. We were, as guys, you're in a situation and which guy's the alpha. You know what I mean? You can tell because, when something's in the fan, who am I going to listen to? You know what I mean? That is a reality. Now, I do want to say this, and forgive me, because it popped in my mind, and I want to share the scripture. Forgive me for being that guy, but I'm going to be the priest who's going to share the scripture.
Please.
And I think it really characterizes something that I just know to be true. And I think that the scripture needs to be running in the background, almost like an app when we're talking about these things, right? So in Philippians, and it just hit me, in Philippians, Paul says, Philippians 1, he says, some indeed preach Christ even from envy and strife, and some also from goodwill. The former preach Christ from selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing to add affliction to my chains, but the latter out of love, knowing that I am appointed for the defense of the gospel. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached. And in this I rejoice, yes, and will rejoice. So in other words, that's my perspective. I've had this conversation before, like on the road path and multiple times over. It's like, are there people who are coming in because of ideological reasons? Absolutely. Are there people who are coming into the Orthodox Church because they try to escape the woke wave? Absolutely. Have there people that have come into the Orthodox Church because they saw it as a much more softer, more caring, and in some way more liberal Christian confession? Absolutely. Have there been people that have come in not interested in Christ, but because they think Orthodoxy, because there is the awareness, the reality of national churches, that they think they understand segregation and white supremacy. This is the place for me. Yes. And anyone who denies it, you're naive. There are people who have come to church for that reason.
Sure.
Do I think that they should be in the church? Absolutely, I do.
Good.
Because either way, Christ is being preached, and I believe
Right.
that. And the other thing is, Christ doesn't need me to defend him in that sense. He's going to sort it out. The thing is, they think they're hunting, but he's the hunter.
Mhm.
He's the one who set the trap for them, and I believe that. I've seen it too often. So, what am I trying to get at? Are the worries and the concerns that have been brought up, especially in that wonderful, very informative interview between Father Josiah and His Grace Irenee? Absolutely, they're great. They're great points. But from my experience, on a lot of levels, I'm glad Christ is being preached, and that's the thing that no one can deny, because people have been coming to the church in droves, not because of live streaming liturgies. I'm gonna stand out there right now. I'm gonna say that formally, and I accept the challenge. That's not why people have been coming, because of live streaming liturgies. In fact, that killed a lot of people's parishes. Actually,
It did. Agreed.
people are coming because of influencers and the proliferation of Orthodox content, good and bad, better or worse. I'm not making the judgment better or worse. I'm just saying it is what it is. That's what we got to deal with, because the reality of it is people have saw a flash of the ark, and they saw that the world around them is the flood is coming, and that's what you're dealing with. That's what you're dealing with.
Yep, that's excellent, Father.
Yeah, it is. Totally.
So I'm going to ask a question, and Father, I don't know. You can talk for your crew on the Royal Path, and Buck and George. I'll ask you all. So George, I'll ask you first. Have you gotten any negative pushback for the work that you've done online?
Yes.
And how do you respond? Does it happen every once in a while, frequently? And how do you respond?
Not well. Define pushback. A couple of times during the time of troubles, which the OCA had, significant pushback. Since then, just a scrum of negativity and or, well, why do you say this, George? You're wrong, or stuff like that, which I guess I could say is pushback, but it doesn't seem to bother me. It really doesn't. One thing, if I may say so, or not, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I'm going to pat myself on the back. Whenever I write something, besides, I try to cross myself, but I try to make it as unarguable as possible. And of course, Gail edits it and she goes, "Well, you misspelled this word, or the context is wrong, or are you sure about this?" and stuff like that. And I do it for her too, because she's a darn good writer herself. Whenever I put something out, like I just put something out this morning about a retrospective on the coronation of King Charles III. Okay, and I know that's going to raise some hackles up in some people. Because of the chrism that he received from the Patriarch of Jerusalem and stuff like that. And of course, he is a globalist, and I'm not a fanboy or anything like that. But if you read what I wrote very carefully, going back to what Father Turbo just said, is Christ being preached, and I saw a coronation rite. I saw the reading of the epistle, the gospel, all that. I saw procession. I saw liturgy. Admittedly, a very desiccated one. Okay, but so if you read what I wrote, you'll see there's some nuance there. And ordinarily, when I write something, I try to make it as unarguable as possible. So that makes it very hard I think, for people to criticize me. They may criticize what I wrote. Okay, excuse me.
Yeah. It makes it easier for them to specifically criticize you because they can't criticize the content.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Buck. And I mean, again, I'm not going to say anything stupid like Pee Wee Herman is a great actor. I'm just not going to do that. So that's my out right there. Okay. Have I made mistakes? Absolutely. Yeah. But do I get pushback? Yeah. This most recent pushback about internet orthodoxy about a month or so ago, there was a minor hubbub, maybe a major hubbub about a certain priest who took us to task. And if I may just say this, I mean, I don't view myself as a teacher by any stretch of the imagination. There's guys out there on the internet who I respect who are really good. And they have the time, and you probably know who I'm talking about. They have the time and the education and the resources to examine and teach. I'm not that guy. I mean, maybe a muckraker. You could say I am. But I will say this: this certain priest kind of painted with a broad brush, or it seemed to, and at the time, because there was a hubbub, and you probably know what I'm talking about. And I just said to each other as we were eating supper one day, I said, where are the bishops? They're the ones who should be teaching because they only have teaching authority. Right? Am I right, Father Turbo?
That's correct. I mean, a priest teaches at the behesting and the blessing of his bishop.
Exactly.
I minister because this is what the bishop has blessed me to do. And
you have enough dimension he gave you. Well, and sadly, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the last thing that the Orthodox, the American Orthodox Episcopate said that was like, this is what we teach, this is what we believe, and we can do no other, was back in 2003. And it was when we had SCUBA, which was probably the last thing the Synod Conference of Canonical Orthodox Bishops in America did. And it was this was 2003, in other words, 20 years ago. And it was about gay marriage. And they said the Orthodox Church cannot and will not sanction or approve of gay marriage. It was just, that's it. This is our red line. Don't try to force us to do that. Since then, I don't know anything. I mean, here's one that you could just hit out of the ballpark if they wanted to, and that'd be like surrogate motherhood. I think surrogacy, there's nothing good that can come out of that. I mean, we might as well just say, let's put minorities in concentration camps or bring back slavery.
Yeah.
I mean, you might as well just say that.
Buck, I want to make sure you get to answer the question.
Oh, on pushback?
Yeah, pushback. You ever gotten any?
Yeah, several times.
What do you do?
I ignore it. Yeah, there's people on Reddit threads that have tried to tag the agency that I work for, which I'd never say on here for this specific reason, and say that I'm this and that and all the ad hominems you would imagine. And that I shouldn't work for them or they should can me from multiple times. And then push back on comments in the comments sometimes. Unless someone reaches out personally, how personally is a DM. But if it's something where they're not doing it in public and they do it privately, like it's, you understand leadership stuff. I know, Alex, you criticize in private and say good things in public. So if they take the time to write me privately and they have an issue, then I'll I'll respond. Otherwise, I don't. There's sometimes the comments are so insultingly, but so hilariously insulting that I screenshot them and like show friends because it's kind of a weird badge of honor. Like, look at this insult. I will say I want to ask Father how to deal with some of this stuff. Although like I said, most of the time I don't. I ignore it. There was an attack. Some online guy. I don't want to say his name because I don't remember it, but I wouldn't even if I did. We went after people that I like personally know, Father John Whiteford, and then Father Zachariah Lynch, who's been on my show multiple times, and Father Josiah Trinum, who I had just met in person. When some guy went after all of them for something, and I didn't push back against him personally, but I just put on Twitter, I've had personal experiences with every one of these guys, and they've been nothing but wonderful to me. And I just left it at that. That was my way to respond. And I didn't say, if you think they're bad, you're an idiot or anything like that. I just thought, why would someone go after these men? They've been nothing but humble and great to me. And I don't understand the attack. So I did fire that tweet out, but I didn't go after the person that wrote it initially that was going after these guys.
I think that's a great way to respond to it. And I would just say this, just to keep everyone on their toes. That's a baseline. Like that's 101, the way you responded. When you want to get to ninja level, when you want to get to Super Saiyan levels, when you bless those or bringing reviling accusations, things like that. So we always have room to grow in the likeness of our master, and it's easier said than done. Believe me. But the baseline is handling like you did, I think that's a great way to do it. Just not even addressing the person per se, but coming to the defense of those who are good. That's excellent.
I'm hearing the family coming in upstairs for the Mother's Day meal, and so I'm sure some kids are going to start opening the door, screaming and running. So Buck, I these are the topics and the discussion I wanted to have. I thought it was real worthwhile. Father, can you tell us real quick, again, my friend Kevin, the goat farmer up north in Iowa, made a comment. He's like, I think the way he said it was like, Orthodox influencers, should have like a precursor, a little bottom line up front statement saying, hey, if you haven't spoken to your wife today, and if you haven't spent time with your children today, and you're going to spend the next 3 hours on podcast and social media, maybe you ought to go talk to your wife and kids first. Maybe you ought to take care of the things that need taken care of before getting sucked into social media. When I was a kid, when my dad would get up in the morning, he might read the paper a little bit before he went to work. He might turn on the news and listen to it before he took off. He might listen to the radio on the way to work in the car if he drove. But that was kind of the extent of it. And then there were discussions. There was nightly news. And as I've since discovered, a lot of people had dads who would scream and yell at the TV about the nightly news and things that were happening, right? Wasn't alone in our household. So, but today you can get up in the morning, immediately check your phone if you missed any calls. Then you check your text if you missed any text, right? Then you might go check out your Facebook feed, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram accounts. Then maybe you check, a couple websites for news to get an update. Then maybe you get in the car and you put on your podcast as you're commuting. I mean, how much is too much, Father? How much is too much social media?
I mean, it depends. I think for some people, they're not doing enough. I think that's the other side of it is, I'm one of those people, getting back to the opinion thing, like, your opinion doesn't matter in regards of the church, but your opinion doesn't matter, especially if you're not, I don't want to say not informed, but not experienced in certain things. Now, that being said, how do you get your opinion to matter? Well, you put the time in. And so, I'll say this. I don't do any social media except for the Royal Path.
Mhm.
Right? I don't do
Why is that?
Twitter.
Why is that?
I don't do Twitter. I don't do Facebook. I don't do any of it. Every once in a while, I have my TurboTax eye. I have a digital scrying point by which I'll creep or whatever, and I have that for strategic purposes. But I don't engage it. I don't use it because I don't need it. I don't need it. And there's a reason why I don't need it. And when someone gets to the point where they don't need it and they can still offer insight and value to a conversation, then you begin to understand how it can actually hinder you. Now, that being said, for a lot of people, they don't have the time to, I'm going to put it this way, they can't afford to put the time in to become informed just for the sake of, being able to what you think is win an online argument. And so what I'm trying to get at here is I think it depends. I think there's a lot of people who they use it to find some sort of stimulus and engage when they should be engaging in prayer. And I mean that. They should be engaging in prayer. They should be engaging with their family. They should be engaging with their community. And they use it as an excuse. But I'm one of those people where even though that's the case for a lot of people, I don't think that we should shut down content and sites for that. That's where priests, godfathers, godmothers need to step in, and that's a pastoral issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that there's plenty of people who maybe a priest, because I'll do this. A priest needs to send someone a podcast or send them something, say, because they don't read. And that they don't got time to read, but that they're going to listen to something on your drive home, because I heard you giving an earful during coffee hour to so-and-so, and you don't know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Right. Listen to this and this one for me. See, that's the kind of nuance that people are lacking. And to be frank, a lot, and forgive me, I'm sure, maybe I need to get pushback on this, but I just think that pastors need to continue to be pastoral and continue to want to, for the sake of our master and for the sake of their own flock, be more not innovative but resourceful in shepherding their flock and realizing where we're at. You know what I mean? And I think that it's a tool. It's a tool like anything else. And if we keep that in the mindset, I live and I operate at such a vibration. Forgive me how crazy that sounds. In that I have a hope for everybody who's Orthodox. I hope that everyone who's Orthodox understands that they're called to something higher, that we're a royal priesthood, holy nation, all of us, as Peter says. And so we need to recognize that we're all ambassadors to Christ. And so if anyone as a people, priest, laity, bishop, if anyone should be quote unquote aware of what's happening in the world, every Orthodox Christian should be. Why? Because this life is for repentance. And this life is also that those who would come unto the one who saves, which is Christ. Like that's, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily the job of the priest to bring people. It's the job of the lay people to be the ones that attract. And that's what a lot of people are missing too, right? So I think that the technology, the tool, the forums, they're there, and everyone should be educated. But being educated and informed is different than being opinionated. And I just think I would like to challenge all of us, one of the biggest problems is this, forgive me, get the cane, pull me off stage. But, I'm going to say this, and this is part of the problem, guys. People are going to get upset. Maybe not in this forum, maybe not with Buck's audience, but I'm sure there's somebody that somehow could throw this out here and say, look what he's saying. But I'm going to say it. I'm going to stand by it. The Orthodox Church is the church of Jesus Christ. I'm going to stand by it.
Yep.
Do what you want. I'm standing by that. This is the church of Jesus Christ. So I'm going to say something else. The Holy Trinity is God, and Jesus Christ is the incarnate Son of God. I'm going to stand by that. And the canons of the teachings and the traditions, the life of the church are given, and they are the means to salvation for all men. I'm going to stand by that. So what we need to be interested in as a people is to be united, not for some, bleeding heart, sensitive, whatever. We need to be united because we have a king who is living. We have a master who's living. He's not a figment of imagination. He's not some empty figurehead. Christ is real and living, and he's the head of the Orthodox Church. And so if we actually, all of us got that together, did you make a mistake this morning? Sure. Did you make a mistake running your mouth at coffee hour? Sure. Repent. Get back to business. Let us be busy about our Father's house and business. And I'll tell you why. It's dark. And as I've been saying lately, hell awaits. And so, if we're spending the time talking about these things, okay, let's talk about it, but for a reason.
Right.
Not just to get riled up, but because truth matters, and the wolf of souls is out there. If people don't see that, wake up. And I think that's one of the big things why, for better, for worse, this is necessary. Because what Alex said, I want to touch this because I don't want to allow platitude to kind of float on the air. And what I mean by that is this: people aren't getting the guidance that they want. I'll probably get a phone call on this one, but it's the truth. It's the truth. And I think
no apologies. You're absolutely right, Father. You're absolutely right.
And so the thing is, it's like we were kind of talking about this on the Real Path. It's like, well, when is this project done? When do we know? And I don't know, but I just know this. There's a lot of people who do not want to go to the internet to get guidance. But why are they going to the internet to get guidance? So no one wants to say that.
Right. Yep.
No one wants to say that, So this is a conversation that requires nuance. And one of the things that I think is, I don't agree with a lot of what Robin says.
Yeah.
There are some things I agree with. And one of the things I agree with is this perspective of trying to take the lead in something. Whether it's possible or not, I don't know. But I would just say, if you're whatever rank, catechumen all the way up to hierarch, if we just take ownership and say, okay, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm going to protect myself. And when I understand to be what my confessor, spiritual father has said, this is the way I want you to operate. I'm going to operate as an Orthodox Christian in this context, in this form, in this realm. Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't it be amazing, instead of people knowing us as being like, and I've heard this so many times, so it's not just some sort of anecdotal baloney, because we've all heard this. All of us have encountered people who are not Orthodox, and we are the Orthodox contact, and they said, man, you guys are kind of jerks. Or man, blah, blah, blah. That's a problem.
Yes.
And that is a problem. Right now, let me just also say this, right? I'm also of the ilk, for my spiritual children, and for those I'm responsible for, I'm trying to raise children, spiritual and biological, that are not cowards and wimps, that aren't so easily offended at everything, and aren't so full of vainglory that if something offends them, that they crumble. Because that's not Christian either.
Right.
Right. So that balance is where we need to be. You know what I mean? It's like, better to be offended than to offend, for sure. But if you can not do both, that's Christ. You know what I mean? It is possible to not do both. It is possible to walk circumspectly, like we were saying earlier. You know what I mean? And really have your speech seasoned with salt. And it is possible to be Christ-like in your humility, meaning, hey, someone said this about me, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they're probably right. I'll give you an example. Forgive me. A couple episodes ago, and I am not a perfect man. Surprise, surprise. And I had said something that was a bit off colored, and someone in the comments said, "Hey, you kind of lost me today because I think they misunderstood the context, but it doesn't matter. Like we shouldn't make fun of people for being gay or something like that. Something to that effect.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so for me, that's the kind of, I answered it. Someone, why'd you answer it? I'll tell you I answered it because you know what? They did me a service. Like, you're right. And if I was off color, because I'm a priest, right? I'm a priest. And I thank them for bringing it up, and I meant it. I wasn't being facetious or sarcastic. I meant it, right? Because I'm a priest and I represent Christ, and I recognize that, right? So it's like, but in my mind, forgive me, I was grateful for that exchange, and I'm grateful that the people who are listening to me, because I feel responsible to my audience, right?
Yeah.
I want them to see that I'm not thinking like, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you know what? Yeah, forgive me. I made a misstep. And I think that was me, honestly, without guile, trying to model. That was a real-time example of what I'm trying to say, right? And I think that's what people want out of their priests. And forgive me, that's what they want out of their hierarchs. That's what they want out of their godfathers. That's what we want.
Yeah.
We want it to be real. That's what people, at the end of the day, everyone, there's people who are LARPing, there's people who are whatever. Okay, Christ is going to be preached. But at the end of the day, we're all looking for something real. We're all looking for the one who is real.
Right. Father, I'm gonna wrap this up. Buck, before I do, I want to say thank you very much again for allowing us to have these discussions.
I got a one last question before we wrap for Father.
Yeah, I got one more real quick.
I do too, but that's okay.
I'm just hearing the kids upstairs and they're going about it.
I'll be quick. Well, my question is, we've got to continue this
conversation.
Yeah.
Or what? So that's a comment, not a question.
Okay, there you go.
But
that's it. That's
Father, I do want to ask the question because you wanted me to bring it up, but I think it's important. Is God using orthodoxy on the internet, or even internet orthodoxy, is God using that for some good?
Okay, mine can tie in with that. It's almost the same thing. And so
Good.
I'll give Father these topics to toss around. He's told me two things in separate times, and I think they can combine also with what you just said. Do you think there's something in the water with people discovering orthodoxy online? And I mean that as a positive thing, not a negative thing. Like it's something out there for some reason is bringing people in. And then you mentioned you said something before we started of why that episode of mine got canned last week, that it wasn't necessarily on the medical interventions or something like that. So all of this, I'll give that to you, Father.
And real quick, and Buck, you can edit this. I got to go, guys. I'm sorry. I really appreciate it, but I got to go. You can cut me out, and I look forward to listening to Father's answer on both of those questions.
All right.
Is that okay, Buck?
Yep, you got it. Yep, thanks, Alex.
God bless you, Alan.
Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
So, yes, I mean, God is using it. It's undeniable. We can toss back and forth how, why, all that, but I mean, it's undeniable, and that's part of the problem, is that it is undeniable. And so, that being said, is there something in the water? Yes, there is something in the water. Another kind of play on that is the waters are rising, getting back to this arc analogy. And people are increasingly waking up to a reality that the material existence of, what I touch, taste, see, hear is all that there is, little shout out to Dark Side of the Moon. That it's not the case. And I think the thing is that we are in a time right now. It's not so much that there's a new evil in the world. It's just that it's revealed. It's revealed in a way that it's never, that it in no one's lifetime that I've talked to has seen it.
I agree.
And that's why I'm gonna use this word, which, people will. It's one of the many terms that you can use to marginalize someone, but I'll use it in this sense. We have entered an apocalypse, if not the apocalypse, in that sense, because the word apocalypse is an uncovering and a revelation. So something has been revealed. When you have the guest that you had on, who all those things are positives in the sense of trying to get the point across, right? A Jewish, self-proclaimed feminist intellectual is saying something is afoot that is not of a natural, material, political. It's beyond that. It's something of what all I can say is a spiritual nature from her words. That tells you something.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That tells you something. And so, the other thing I would add to that is this is something that's always missing. And unfortunately, and I get it, people operate out of concern and fear, but I have absolute confidence in God. And for better or for worse, we can say that, but ultimately, God is allowing everything for chastisement and repentance, and he's calling people to awaken. That's why their eyes are being opened. And it's one of the reasons why God is using the means that he's using to get people to see that there's consequences to how we've been living as a people, meaning the human race. There's consequences to it.
Absolutely.
And now it's at the point where people are being able to make their choice. So it's good that people can see that there is a choice, that there is truth in the world still. Is that?
Yeah, that sounds like a good way to wrap. Yeah. George, what you
Totally
got?
does.
Anything in closing?
I just want to thank you and Alex for allowing me to be on it, and Father Turbo, a long time. We got to get together. If I can end on this insight that I got from a Catholic priest, Father Chris Alar, on the internet, and he said the reason the evil is just compounding daily is so that at the end of the day, Judgment Day, there will be no excuse. Okay, I mean, it's one thing to say, well, I stole some paper clips from work. Okay, it's another thing to say, well, I'm going to cut the breasts off of a 15-year-old girl because she thinks she's a boy.
Yep.
There's no nuance there.
And
Right.
forgive me, George. I know we're gonna forgive me, Buck. I know it's something I'm pulling.
No.
But we've heard this in various things, but it's just the truth. Evil is allowed because of the indifference and the cowardice of those who would be good men.
Yes.
So I would just say this. This is another thing where so much of this is leading back to the Orthodox Church. Like, why is it that the Orthodox Church has been at the center and the locus of all the things for the last 3 years? And someone can say, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, that's why there's been so many quote unquote libertarians and people of a more liberated, not just libertarian, but liberated mindset politically that have been discovering the Orthodox Church, because the Orthodox Church has been like the lone voice that's been holding out for truths in the sea of madness. And in spite of people within the Orthodox Church trying to silence that spirit of truth, that voice. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That tells you everything.
Yeah.
Because I'll say this. That's evil. And
Yes, I agree.
I take it as a badge of honor if someone comes after me for saying that.
I agree with you.
It's evil what's happening in regards of the brainwashing, the manipulation, and the mutilation of children. It's evil. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no nuance. It's evil, right? And so it's a shame if someone robed in black won't say that. I'll stand by that too.
You know what? I agree with you. I mean, it's like the Good Samaritan. It always comes back to that. A priest walks by, walks to the other side of the road. A Levite walks by, he walks to the other side of the road. The Samaritan, the worst people in the eyes of first century Jews, picks him up, puts him on his donkey. That's what you got to do. And if a man in black robes, as you said, Father Turbo, is just going to be whatever, or worse, march at a pro-life rally and say abortion's okay, or abortion's not okay, but a woman has the right to kill her child.
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry, you can't reconcile that.
Right.
You can't reconcile that, and it's bad enough to be indifferent, as you said, Father, but to actually go the other way further and to give a blessing, well, there you go.
Right.
Anyway, I probably shouldn't have said what I said.
Oh, no,
but
all right.
yeah,
That exact topic
true.
then has been said on this show, referencing that exact person, so it's okay.
yeah.
Let me, and I said in closing earlier, now it'll be in closing. Father Turbo, I was thinking of something as you guys talked about the mutilation of children and how evil it is. There is a reaction to it that we also have to avoid, because it naturally and rightfully so in some ways gets our ire up, I suppose you could say. And like, now I want to go do XYZ to these people pushing for this. What's the inappropriate way to react to the evil that we're talking about? And then maybe a more royal pathway.
So the inappropriate way to do it, first and foremost, is to allow that ire to move you into maybe even a worse sin, right? And then to begin to now operate unlike a Christian. So you're just as guilty in some regards, and even more guilty because you should know better.
You should know.
And so, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. That is not a call to indifference, but rather it's a call to the type of sacrifice. And so what does that lead to? A lot of forgive me, but again, a lot of men, they want to say and they want to talk real tough behind beers on the porch and do this and that. But behind the scenes, they are looking at things and doing things that they shouldn't do. And so here's where it gets tough, right? What kind of spiritual life are you actually living? Forgive me, at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. Because at the end of the day, the reason why your prayers don't mean anything is because you're not putting the time in. You're not putting the time in to have those prayers mean something. You're not living the life that your spiritual father, that the church has put before you, right? Does that mean that you need to be you're an Athonite ascetic doing this? No. What it means is really simple. It's like, walk humbly with God, honor your wife, honor your children, honor your priest, even if he's, not the best, and learn to suffer, learn to fast, learn to pray, read the scriptures, learn to actually live an Orthodox life. And then here's the thing, don't roll your eyes at me when I say that. That's part of the problem, is people roll their eyes at that. But I'm telling you, if half of the men who are riled up and ready to grab their AR and do something about it, if half of them put half of that energy into their prayer rules, the world would be different. That's what our church teaches.
That's right.
And so that's the reality of it is, my challenge is to men, let's absolutely be scandalized and upset, but let's absolutely take that energy, because the fathers teach us anger is given to fight against our passions and the devil. So let's take that energy and use it first to prayer, because right contemplation brings right action.
Right.
And if we are praying and repenting and having the moral authority because we are not living in hypocrisy, then the others around us, first our women, then our children, and then the hierarchs and the priests, everyone will begin to now feel that and feel that weight of authority. That's where it comes from, is not living in hypocrisy. That's what we have to do first and foremost, because anything past that is all a trap. Because we're not supposed to be ideologues. We're supposed to be I don't speak that out of a conservative ideology. I speak it because I'm a priest, because I'm an Orthodox Christian, because I'm a father. I got 8 children. And forgive me, I speak it because that's the life that I live. That's why I'm on your show, right? Because obviously there's a sense of, I'm not just saying this, right? So this is...
You walk the walk. You walk the walk.
And we all can. That's the thing.
We all can. Exactly.
If I... we all can. That's what we believe as Christians. That's what we believe as Orthodox.
That's right. Absolutely.
There's a Saint Seraphim of Sarov quote in there somewhere.
That's right.
That's
right. That's right.
All right, George, plug the website, sir.
Oh, Monomakhos.com. And
everyone right now listening is saying, how the heck do you spell what he just said?
Monomakhos. And you're probably thinking, where did I get that name? Well, there was a Byzantine emperor, Constantine IX, Monomakhos, he who fights alone. I don't know why he got the name. And his daughter married the Grand Duke of Kiev, and they had a child named Vladimir. And he took his grandfather's moniker, so to speak, his cognomen, and put it on him, and he's called Vladimir Monomach. And the legend is that the crown that the Grand Dukes of Kiev had, and later the Tsars of Russia up until Peter I, had the cap of Monomach. I don't know. I'm kidding. I'm rambling. I just liked it. It just came to me.
That's all.
That
tough
works. Name. It's tough.
Yeah, it is. Father Turbo, anything to plug with y'all's parish or the robes, etc.?
Yeah, Seminary of Egypt. The website, seminaryofegypt.net, I think, and the St. Elizabeth Sisterhood, which is the urban monastic community attached to our parish, they make baptismal robes. And so those of you who are interested in coming to the church, please, it's one of the ways that the sisters support themselves here. So please, they're wonderful baptismal robes, and check it out. If you need a baptismal robe, please, they would appreciate the support, the business. And when you do that, you submit your name, and the sisters pray for you and pray for those that you, family and loved ones, they don't have to be Orthodox, and the sisters will pray for those names that you submit. And even if you're not buying a robe, the sisters will pray. So just want to plug that. And then everything else, I think, is people know the real path. And just forgive me. I just want to say, in spite of everything, I get kind of worked up, and but really, Jesus Christ conquers.
He does.
Amen. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, bud.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Our first 2-parter in the history of this show. And I think we covered some good stuff on there. Another special shout out and thanks to my producer, Chris from Podsworth Media. Came all the way down to my baptism and gave me a nice gift that I'm going to be using as part of this recording process. I won't bore you with the details, but it was a pretty good gift, and I know he will appreciate it. And of course, thank you to my family, all my friends that came down, Amy and Julie Mastrini, of course. It was great. What a great time. Until next week, we'll talk to you guys later. See ya.
You get split in half, the icon, the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.